Wherever on a day, this na Mohammed Shilon coming to from North Carolina, and my co-host na Mr. Victor Mengot, who needs no introduction, but he will introduce himself. And we've co-hosted this show for several weeks, maybe several months now. So today is March 12th, 2023. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the day in the world. So we get a time change. So sorry if we're coming to you people late. The east coast of the United States, we get a change in time. So we hope not to cause anybody any inconvenience, but at whatever stage you want to catch the show, I hope you're going to enjoy them. And as usual, make whatever meaningful contribution you want to get. You know, today we get a few topics, and the most important of which is this current confusion where to take place between we and Guinea. A problem for a location or a town called Yenga, of which a lot of people in Australia may have never ever heard, no year but one day, as to the town of Yenga. To Yenga Mao, Yenga. It is at the Guinea-Sierra border. And for a while, Guinea declaimed this land. Then it's strictly for all indications, we get the land, but gradually we have been very docile or non-reactive. We don't allow Guinea for gradually they creep into it, exercise some open control. So now they've become even bold. They've amassed the presence of troops. Now they amassed troops then at the town, not the border now, into the town, restricting the lives and activities of Sierra Leoneans and depriving them of their regular livelihood and all of that. All this is going on, and this has been going on since way back from the Kaba days, the President Kabaden days. So it has been, I don't know whether we wait until it becomes an international crisis. But for the succeeding governments, the Kaba government, the BO government, the Hannes Korma government, it doesn't seem that to resolve the Yenga situation has been a priority. But the reality is, what is happening there, they affect the lives of fellow Sierra Leoneans. So for we, now this network and this broadcast, we are more nationalistic. We are pro-nationalistic. Anything that affects Sierra Leone, and anything that is in the best interest of Sierra Leone, that's what we're for. We don't get into the party politics or the petty politics, regardless of what some of you may think. And that not with intention. Maybe sometimes we might get too close to the borderline, leading some people to mistakenly believe that we are pro or against. We are concerned about the ordinary man, the ordinary woman, the ordinary child. We're concerned about territorial preservation and integrity. We're concerned about agriculture, economics. And this now we on prime concern, regardless of which party is in power. The facts on the ground don't change. So we just want to bring that to Una. We'll get some videos and we'll play for illustrate to some of Una, for be able for associate on a thinking, on a perception, on a perspective of on an understanding of waiting to go on at that part day of Salon. Because sometimes, like the civil war will take place in Salon, when the war began in Liberia, and we say, hey, it might come across the border, we were very lackadaisical, kind of carefree. Why we can say why war? We don't be worried. Because say, oh no, the war not will come over. Then it came over. Then when the war come over, we say, I not go reach Freetown. Then it reached Freetown. And we see the devastation, both in human cost, in infrastructure, whether what it cost we. But it looks like we have not learned anything, because we have not taken practical steps for prevent a recurrence of that. And we see how many younger people who lost their arms and limbs as a result of an unprovoked war, a senseless war, a war to which to this day most of we don't even know the cause nor the sense behind the war. So this is serious, but if we go by with history, we get two problems with Australians. We get very short memory. We're engaged in what we will call escapism. We like for just forget about something and pretend it never happened. With the same power successions in government, and then we also not seem for worry about something if not directly they affect we. With which day he reach home. But when he reach home, it's too late. If rain they come, take umbrella, or when you raincoat and when you rain boot, and put something over your head for prevent the rain from. You say, well, the rain they come here, that way, kind of here. Then when the rain begin hit you, now that time you want to look for something for cover yourself. By the time you're able to do that, you could all wet completely. But now we mentality down and our pattern now and then, our disposition now and then, and it will continue to take things that way. So Yenga is very important because if nothing is done, and there are many ways, we don't have to fight with Guinea physically. There are international organizational structures in place for be able to resolve the territorial issue of that place there. But if government they come and go, they know they address them, things will only get worse because when you allow one country for make massive presence into the country, at the end of the day, they will be so much embedded into the country that they are not going to be able to, it's not going to be easy to get them out. So we want people to understand that, and we try to address that. Ecowas will talk lengthily and loftily and persuasively and educationally about international boundaries and treaties and the significance of the West African agreements where the countries they can go into. So with that said, I'm going to pass on over to Mr. Victor Mengot, make a greet you now, and then we'll get into the subject. We'll get 2-3 videos and for play for now. So I turn it over to Mr. Mengot.
Well, Fambulem, in a good evening. In a no say or good day, we say if you day across the pond in the United States. And me where they broadcast so enjoying it today, I'm on duty in Africa, in the Horn of Africa. And if you know, the Horn of Africa is a place where there's a lot of border control and border security issues. And I'm coming here today not taking off my government expert hat and transport. I'm coming here today to talk to you about Ecowas treaties and protocols, where I've been very fortunate to be one of the experts them. We look into joint border operation and security for both trade facilitation and the free movement of citizens. So I can share my thoughts with you now and some of the protocols that are in place and how we can resolve this Yenga issue by diplomatic means.
Now, I would like to see if we producer, it's Mr. Mengot, are you on? Because it looks like to say there is some interruption. Okay. All right, continue, sir. Continue.
Yeah, I've done my introduction. I think we can now, for put her in context, if we technical team can play the video where a member of parliament some time ago raised this issue about the Yenga issue. So it will put her in context. Then from that, we'll analyze the video and look at the existing protocols and the steps and what we have to do in solving this perennial problem.
I want to talk about something His Excellency did not talk about, and he was supposed to talk about, and that is the Yenga issue. The Yenga issue is causing trouble in this country. It has been over 20 years, it's ongoing. Yes, the former government did something, did what is good, but it needs 20, over 20 good years. If Yenga belongs to us, Your Excellency, please let it be. Let's do everything within our power so that we can get Yenga back. But if it is not, so be it. Let the Guineans take it. Because there was a few times ago, the youth in Kwendo nearly caused serious trouble. The Guineans came and built their poles, and then the next day the Kwenu youth went there and destroyed it. And the other day they came over. I'm not saying they did it, but our street lights were destroyed. So you see what's going on? Something is boiling. And then finally, when I actually came back, we paid a visit to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs, the newly elected Minister of Foreign Affairs, has bundles of knowledge on legalism. And when we heard him speaking, I said to myself, Yenga will be solved by the grace of God. Because he has the know-how. He knows, let's the Minister of Foreign Affairs come together with his know-how so that the Yenga issue can get to an end. Because you cannot solve a problem for 20 good years. We are suffering. Those days, Kwenu was our Dubai. Freestyle lives here to go and buy in Kwenu and come back. This is exactly. We were supplying a commercial bank with money in this country. So we want, we are working with 5 countries coming into Kwenu to do businesses. We were like, helping the government economically. So we want really to ask the government. They did not say anything about it. And that maybe it was an oversight. And I would like His Excellency, if he is watching, please, Mr. President, take this proposal into consideration so that the Yenga issue can come to an end. And don't forget, tell to me, when you meet His Excellency, always tell him to say, Amina, Amina, Amina.
Mr. Menga, do we need to play the other one, or do we wait until we get into the analysis of things?
We will wait until we get into the analysis.
Okay, all right. Now, with this member of parliament, first and foremost, let me just make an observation. This is for the viewing audience as well as we parliament, because this is a common practice I see on the part of members of parliament. We parliamentary system not seem to maintain the level of decorum that should be maintained. The parliamentarians do not cut off their microphone. So all of them engage in speaking to each other while somebody is talking to the parliament itself, to the audience in the parliament. So somebody needs to bring to the attention of the speaker that this kind of practice has to end, in the sense that when somebody is speaking, we should only have 50 or to 100 members of parliament all talking to each other, because what you hear is a little bit of commotion and pandemonium in the background. So for purposes of efficiency and being able to communicate directly to the public so we can get a clear understanding, I hope we will prevail on parliament through the auspices of the speaker and the second in command to please adopt a practice whereby someone is talking that all the other microphones are cut off, so or muted, because you can tell, say, other members who are not on the floor talking or speaking, their microphones are not muted, so everybody in contribution and conversation will lead to drowning what is being said by the person who is on his or her feet addressing the House. Okay, that said, let me turn it over back to Mr. Mengo just so we can continue with issue about Yenga. So, Mr. Mengo, I turn over to you to see uh, what you're going to say. Then we'll go do some analysis.
Well, fumble them, I think, say, what I want to bring to your notice is that when we become, Sierra Leone is a member of 2 sub-regional and regional bodies them. When are 2 them bodies and they will for know how to cooperate with countries them, with neighbors them. Closer to home, we get the Mano River Union, which comprise of Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia, and Cote d'Ivoire. This union known there for a long time, and we share a lot of things in common in terms of language, in terms of border, because if you take some key tribes within the region, like the Madingos, the Fulanis, the Sosos, you can find in an all-land country. So we get that commonality of culture, of language, and ethnicity. But then we get the wider regional body, where now the Economic Commission for West African States. And Ecowas, they're very keen on border security, border control, and border management. So for put this thing in context, let we look at why we need for consider a border. Because your border, now like your backyard. If you not get fence, your neighbor in dog or in push go encroach na your yard. Even we get some places na free tongue self way some yard na your road. You dey pass from one compound to the other. But then in a mutual agreement with the people that will live in that vicinity today. So now the same way, the countries there. In Sierra Leone, we get a very porous border. With Liberia, we are almost surrounded by Guinea, the north, and the south. So why do we need to get this joint border operation? Number one, now for protect with national security and autonomy. Now make sure the Ecowas be agree for member states and forget joint border operations. I will go into detail of that, waiting at us today. Number two, the Ecowas also get protocols on free movement of citizens and the efficient flow of goods and traffic. When you talk about free movement of citizens, let's bring them closer to home. In 2019, the ECOWAS member states, they agree say all citizens of the region forget their biometric identity card, where 9 people can go use instead of passport for move from one country to the other. Because we already recently, our passport price don't go up. Because it's pegged to the dollar, and when the leons devalue against the dollar, it means people then they pay more. And we get with traders then, where they trade between Guinea and Liberia. So most of them want to travel safely, where they're not going to get for the used passport and then till and day. And for showing how we slow for getting to that treaty here and then protocol agreement to sign. I remember in 2017, when they register with citizens them for election, they collect a lot of data from we. Some of we come out from the diaspora, we go to Tongo register. Even some of the questions they be awkward. They begin ask you whether a natural birth they been born you or a still birth or not, or natural birth, or whether a true cesarean section. I mean, those questions were ridiculous, but they asked us a host of questions. on the understanding, say, at the end of the process, we will get two things. We voter register card, which we'll come to later on in the program, and the biometric identity. So what did we end up getting? We end up getting just the voter register card when a laminated thing, where people can begin use for identity. But recently, with the new government, NACRA come and introduce the verification process where they give all man this, what they call national identification number. That's a step in the right direction, but we already go. We've been in a parliament. Where they may say you get for use your NIN, not your NIN, forget registered. So the argument was whether it was mandatory or optional. But we solved that problem there. So all the country, they don't get them. But now, as against Salon, now we're not the last. Now, they don't actually get the voter. We get three identity. We get the national identity. We get the Ecowas identity. They'll get the identity for people that were settled in Sierra Leone. So the other thing we need for control with border and look at how they manage the border, now for trade facilitation. Because we get a lot of with traders them where they go Guinea, more so, where they go buy. But now then they even suffer because as they read from social media, the devaluation of the liaison make the Guinea francs don't be more valuable. So with people that where they go, they get for cross that border they frequently. And remember at one time when Guinea been get an election, then close them border, where actually it affects a lot of we traders them because we get vehicles that were stuck on both sides. So you can see how important for law we manage, we border them good. Then we also look at things to do with trafficking, contraband goods. Because now there's a lot of contraband goods going across the West region, and then they affect the revenue and the economy. Because when you bring substandard goods in the country, it means if you smuggle them through the border, the NRA, with our National Revenue Authority, they lose income. So again, the border control is very, very important. But let's go back in history. Why we need border control and joint thing. Let's start first with the Ebola crisis. Ebola not started in Salon. It started in Guinea. Then it spread through Liberia and then Salon. But at that time, say quick Guinea been enclosed the border. Women they say, go come. Because I remember some of the politicians have been there in denial. Because in the eastern part, it be affect mostly, and politics be inside. So you need border control for disease surveillance and for managed epidemic. Then another reason why you use border control. And you cannot do that without your neighbor. Also, we go further than Ebola. When the war started, it started in Liberia. I remember Salombi contributes to a West African force. We been go Liberia. The same way, because of the porous border, we're not secure with border, the war spill over from Liberia to Sierra Leone. And Guinea also then at the same place because we get a common area around that Koindu area when the three countries they meet. But the moment where Cuscas be in Liberia, Guinea then close the border. We left with border unsecured. Then the war spread, started in the eastern province until the first time when they fired the first gun na Bomaru. Say we were in the western region, people that say one or day now. Until eventually the war spread, take up freedom, and we'll not go forget the famous January 6th. The other reason why we need border control, now for also look at issues to deal with animal diseases. Because say there are a lot of nomadic people there, now the three countries there. Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, and people, and they move animals across border. And then animals, and they can carry disease, where some of them can affect human beings. So we need security, and that security and control of the border, we can only do them with the cooperation of we neighbors. And then finally, even election, because we have commonality. Recently, when we do voter registration, there was accusation that some of the people who have been registered cross over go Liberia, go register some people there for take part in our election. And we also see Guinea self whether they get an election, then close the border, and then they be affected. So these are the reasons why we need border security and control. But what I will bring to the attention of Fambulem, most countries in Africa, we border not always have been set up. Even when you take Sierra Leone and Guinea. If you remember, Guinea was under French colonial administration, Sierra Leone was under the British colonial administration. So now with colonial masters, then they set them boundary, and they, even the map set, if you want to you go to the British Library or the French archives. So when they set them boundary, the boundary them is set irrespective of tribe or economic and social activity, and we get what you call a porous border. So if you take the main border, na Salone, you get the Koindu one, where now there you get Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. If you go Gambia, you get the one Balamuya, where Guinea and Sierra Leone. Then if you go further south, you get the one at Gendema, where on that side, we call them Gendema, the Liberian man, and call them Bowater side. So you can see all them, because of all that, now makes sure the economic community of West African states decide, say, the best way forward, now forget joint border operation. And that joint border operation, it means the countries that we border themselves, then for coming to agreement for see how they go manage them border them. So then they come through the Ecowas Supplementary Act, where all the 15th head of states them in sign, forget joint border operation. And coincidentally, when you look the heads of state that have been signed at the time, the President Ernest Bai Koroma signed on behalf of Sierra Leone. The president who have been in Guinea, which is Alpha Conde, if you look at the list, he not sign, whether an omission or they may get ulterior motives. So all the other countries that sign. So that supplementary act day is binding on every member state. And also border control, then are concern for we European partners there, like the EU, especially when it comes to Temple Road. We see a lot of we brother and sister them waiting, say the grass is greener on the other side, and then they try for go through by land. We know a lot of people them we don't suffer crossing the desert for greener pastures in Europe. So these are what the reason why we get for control the border. And now come to the Ecowas protocol, where now the joint border protocol. And then it been signed in 2013. So there's a legal framework. The Supplementary Act, now for make sure say, the countries them establish joint border operation. So the ECOWAS region, through the help of the EU, then get 3 pilot schemes. One, now between Benin, that is Cotonou, and Lagos, in a place called Semekrake. There's another one between Accra and Lomé, in a place called Nuepe. Then there's a third one between Burkina Faso and Togo, where them border and then EU pay for them, and then set up the border control and the border security system. And I was fortunate enough to work in the evaluation of them border posts and they, especially the one between Cotonou and Lagos, and Ghana between Accra and Lomé. So not everyone get this wahala, because one time in there again where there was a dispute between Nigeria and Benin, where the Cotonou border been closed. The Nigerians then closed the border because Benin, Cotonou gets a free port, and it's easier for some people than from Nigeria import goods from Cotonou for go to Lagos and other parts. So when Nigeria been closed the border, then it be affect trade between the two countries. But because they don't put in place the Ecowas strategy for joint border operation, then be able to resolve them. This is not one of the things and where we not able to do in a salon. So when you talk about joint border operation, you get three models. Model one, now for find an area between the two countries, which is like a no man's land. For in our America, it's just like, say between Canada and America, you get the 49 parallel, which divide US and Canada. So you get a zone which traverse the two countries them, where in a day you could get joint border operations. And it means that the facilities go there in that single location there. But like the building where they did, you could get for deal with on one side from, like if you check the Cotonou, Lagos one, you get part of the building where they're on the Nigerian side, we get all the enforcement agencies there. Then the same on the Cotonou side. So what means these two border control are connected using information technology. So it means the protocol is that it also facilitates the free movement of citizens. And it means that when you left one country of the state to another, the responsibility is on the country of departure for do all the border checks and control. And with this joint border operation, once they don't do all the checks, it means the other side don't get all the details. So if they don't get clearance, then it enhances the free movement of citizens. So joint border operation, now a common zone. And within that, there are issues about control where I will come to. Then you get the other type of border control where one border post then at one side, the other border post then at the other side. For bringing closer to home, in Sierra Leone now, you get the border between Liberia and Sierra Leone in Gendema, where you get the Sierra Leone post in Gendema, then the Liberian post in Bowater side. So it means then they check you from the Sierra Leone side before you go to the Liberia side. But because we know actually put the border systems, joint border operation into existence, it becomes tedious because it means that they check you on both sides. And under the joint border operation, the onus is on the country of departure for check you, right? And also border control, the importance of joint border control also talk about things to do with the border security agencies, them, how they will carry arms and control their jurisdiction. Because, for instance, the one in Guinea, they would have to do their territorial integrity and protect their own side. Because, like, for instance, in Guinea now, say in border control, you get the gendarmerie, right? In some countries, border security, they under customs and excise. Like in Sierra Leone now, we get so many agencies. You get Customs, NRA, you get ONS, Office of National Security, you get police, you also get people the way they deal with phytosanitary. That is, then they inspect them, plants and animals and all those sort of things. So with all the institutions, and they get multiplicity of institutions, there have to be a sequence of control. But before I go into that, let's say more about how we go facilitate this joint border operation. In fact, the Supplementary Act, where I referred to in 2013, it makes sure say we standardize the procedures for implementing the joint border operation. Waiting at procedure day. You get forget standard operating procedures, joint administration of control, also things for do with customs duty and tariffs, common tariffs. But the key what it is say, where I'll come to when I'm there, now the heart of this discussion. Now, these countries forget bilateral or multilateral agreement on how they go manage the border. Why is that? Because when you get agreements there, it means it make it easy when you get disputes. Because according to the act, if we don't get that bilateral agreement with Guinea, like we get this so there is a dispute resolution mechanism, and that rests with the Ecowas court. You go back to what you have been saying. When we go for go sign a treaty, and with people and go sign the treaty, then therefore make sure say, then bring it to parliamentarians. And our parliamentarians then now, then therefore discuss in parliament, and actually when they don't discuss and done, then they ratify the treaty and then engage the neighbors, like in your case, Liberia and Guinea, for get this agreement as to how we go manage we border them. Now that's we not do it. Now I make we get all them problem here. So you get the established border, but then you get all that other border like Yenga. So we're now in at the dispute. So before I continue, give chance for my co-host if you will get for ask questions based on in legal background on some of the issues they are raised. Mr. Shillon, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I just get one or two questions with respect to which you do bring up now this discussion. Talking about this cross-border management, what my question based upon the border agreement here, and I don't know whether the treaties then they sign or not. It seems to me each country, when the Ecowas they meet, they come up with them ideas there how for minimize confusion and how for make crossing over from one country to the other more efficient. They also get some internal adjustment we then get for do from the home office, now the capital, and then parliament. Now, you mentioned the fact that when we don't sign the agreement here, just as we'll get the Yenga problem, as we do now, which has been going on for over a decade or longer, it seems to us, or to me, that we forget a mechanism in place after we own representative, now ECOWAS does sign whatever agreement with respect to any territorial or border dispute. Waiting at the mechanism by which they put that into law, because generally, according to international law, treaties or international agreements usually are incorporated into we own local laws. They become matters of law on which lawsuits can be filed, and sometimes within agreements, then they can agree or specify the locus or the venue where such lawsuits can be filed, which generally you can refer to.
Mr. Shilin, I cannot hear you properly.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Let me repeat what I was saying. The point is, the question I may get for you with respect to the Yenga situation. We don't get this problem over a decade or longer, much longer, maybe 2 decades or more, that we've not come up with any solution, but we do know that we have cross-border agreements. We have treaties and agreements that are signed within the Ecowas context. We get the Ecowas court that supposedly has jurisdiction over any matters of dispute. Now, my main question is, with the what mechanism we get in our country once we engage in then cross-border agreement here or treaties, how do we come back home and ratify it into becoming laws now we own country, because all international treaties should become a law of the land. So what mechanism do we have in place? Because you mentioned just now, say, the signature page on the agreement that you mentioned, President Doumbouya of Guinea in signature not appeared there. Whether it was by omission.
Alpha Conde.
Yeah, Alpha Conde, not yeah, the previous president, sorry. In signature not appeared there because it was during its time that the agreement was entered into. So we don't know whether by omission or it was deliberately left out. So in situation like that, number one, how do you enforce such an agreement if a vital signature was left out? Number two, the question is it the ECOWAS court that takes jurisdiction over the matter? And then number three, how does an individual country, say Sierra Leone on itself or by itself, how do they go by and ratify that agreement there for make it into law and for make it operable or operational? So I just want to ask a question. Where did we ever, or have we ever, with respect to these cross-border treaties that you refer to, where all these signatures are, including we own President Anes Nkrumah, his signature appeared there, have we, or has our parliament rectified it or ratified it? Has our parliament ratified it in whatever way, shape, or form is supposed to be, or has it just been left open? And that may be one of the reasons why we get the Yenga problem. And I'm a question nowadays.
Okay, now I think for their viewers, they understand, because why we need joint border operation, apart from security, now for also regional trade facilitation. And I will list some of the existing regional treaties they will get and point out the importance. Number one, the first one at the Ecowas Protocol in 1979 of 29th May, where they talk about free movement of persons, residents, and establishments. That one is still going on because you as an Ecowas citizen, you can get for leave in another Ecowas state for 6 months without, you can enter without a visa and leave for 6 months without residence permit. Even that is being flouted by some member states. Because I remember when I was working in Liberia, even though it gives me 6 months, but the Liberian government said, no, we can only give you 3 months. Then after 3 months, you can't reapply, then we will give you an extra 3 months, which is a breach of the Ecowas protocol. That's the first one. The second one, in 1982, interstate transportation. The protocol on interstate transportation. We see now in Sierra Leone, if you go, we get vehicles the way they come as far as Mali and Senegal and Gambia. So when they enter our country, they get for get what they call laissez-passer. And we also get for charge them entry permit, then get forget things to do with insurance and all the rest of it. Then the more important thing, that was in 29th of May 1982, Convention A/P5/5/82, then for mutual administrative assistance for customs matters. You know, say there's a lot of trade between we and we neighboring countries. So you get forget that harmonization of customs tariff. As you see now, a lot of people and they import vehicles through Guinea, when they bring it to Sierra Leone. So that's another one. Then you get the one in 1992, which is very, very much important. That was Convention AP1/792 of 29 July, where it relates to mutual assistance in terms of criminal matters. Apart from the Interpol, so if you commit crime na Guinea, you can't Salon. There's a treaty where it means the Salon government gets mutual agreement for hand over that criminal back to Guinea. Away, aside from the international protocol on Interpol. Then you get the one in 2003. That is to deal with road transport, transit facilitation. That, again, cross-border movements for goods. And then the final one now when we link the Ecowas protocol with the UMOA states, then are the French economic zone. So these are all the treaties. And for answer your question now, I don't give all them treaties are important. Normally, some of these treaties are signed by heads of state. Mostly if it comes to customs, they will get like their finance minister, or if you come to things like the criminal matters, the very minister for internal affairs. The normal procedure is when we enter into those kind of agreement and discussion, the first step is that even if not the president, but the minister responsible for that area needs to come to parliament, present the treaty to the parliamentarians, discuss them, and we ratify them. Once we don't ratify in parliament, the next step, if not joint operation, whether bilateral or multilateral, we now start the process of discussing with our neighbors so we can get a legally binding agreement. So these are what we are failing to do, because when you get those legally binding agreements, it makes provision for dispute resolution. And when it comes to the joint border protocol, if we do not sign it, I can now explain waiting now the dispute resolution according to the treaty. It says any dispute that may arise in the interpretation, application, and implementation of this provision, that is things to deal with joint border operations, manual of sequence of control, may be resolved by the adjoining states under the guidance of the community. The community in this case is Ecowas, and in the spirit of cooperation to promote and facilitate trade across the region. So trade is a key aspect. Then he said, any member state in resolving such dispute shall primarily be guided by the need to uphold the supremacy of this act. In this case, the act I'm talking about is the Supplementary Act 2013 on Joint Border Operation, and the paramount objective of regional integration as prescribed by the Ecowas treaties, which I don't mention. Then finally, it says, should member states fail to agree a common ground on contentious issues, then the community will be the final arbiter in interpretation, application, and implementation of relevant sections of the procedures. So you see, this is what happens. First, we should have ratified the treaty in Parliament. Secondly, we should put the mechanism in place to have bilateral or multilateral agreement. In our case, I would say multilateral, because of the commonality of boundaries between Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. So we get that multilateral discussion there with our counterparts and enter into that agreement, which is legally binding. And once we have that, Guinea cannot, for one, say they will close the border without informing us. And they cannot encroach on the territorial integrity. What they can do, we can come into an agreement for joint border management of that particular area, because it appears that the trade adjustment that is the issue. I hope I've tried to explain this issue to my people. Over to you, Mr. Shillong.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the 2013 Supplementary Act of Joint Border Operation. And I think you try for the dispute resolution, because very important in every treaty, even in common agreements between people or among parties, one of the fundamentals in agreement is to be able to get a dispute resolution. And so now in this situation you mentioned, I was looking for, but I was not able to get to it. I was looking for when and say if there is a dispute, which to me is very vaguely constructed, it will have to be resolved by the community. So we have to presume the community will be referring to the Ecowas court. Am I right?
Yeah, the Ecowas. I mean, first of all, we as a government need to raise the issue in the Ecowas Parliament, because there are two.
Okay.
You have the Parliament, raise the issue in the Parliament, it's debated there. Then, if our members cannot come to an agreement with the other members, then the next stage will be Sierra Leone should now lodge a complaint in the Ecowas court for competent judges for determining the issue. Let me give another example where similar thing happened. As you know, some of we at Trisim. I mean, my fatherland is Cameroon. I've never shied away from that. There was this same issue between Cameroon and Nigeria in the case of the Bakassi Peninsula, right? But because Cameroon and Nigeria are not in the same region, because Cameroon is in the CIMAC region and Nigeria is in ECOWAS, then we therefore go into an international court of arbitration. At the time, during the presidency of Olusegun Obasanjo. So the International Court of Arbitration looked into the issues and ruled in favor of Cameroon. So Bakassi was transferred to Cameroon. And the point is, the dispute in that area, because the Bakassi Peninsula is an oil-rich area. So for long, Cameroon and Nigeria together discussed it. So my question, what is the significance of Yenga? Is there something in Yenga that we don't know about, which is causing this? Probably some mineral wealth. Because I don't see it as an important trading post. So why has it not been resolved? And the only way to resolve it is to go into this bilateral or multilateral agreement with the neighbors, even if Guinea are not willing to come into this kind of agreement, get it through the ECOWAS court. So the onus is on us, Sierra Leoneans, who feel aggrieved to the regional court and the regional parliament for debate and final arbitration. That would be my comment on that.
Okay, now you just mentioned the fact that you want to know the actual essence and worth or worthiness of Yenga itself. Because so far as we know, it is not, as we know publicly, there has not been any mention of any mineral significance or agricultural worthiness of the area. So why are we into all of this? Well, the thing about that, it's also it's a very vital question. One I think say for be raised, but to me, correct me if I'm wrong. It appears the video would also so far of the member of parliament talking about Yenga. She addressed the significance in so many words or indirectly of Yenga. And that's the economic significance because she talked about common border trading. She talked about, because it's a border post, so to speak, between among Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. And she even make a comparison that that area could have been we own Dubai, you know. So that in and of itself may be a significant reason because economically, commercially, it might be vital or material to we economic well-being. I mentioned that was just in response to what you say just now. But the other question, what I get, some of the things that we just mentioned, and I'm not trying to be more knowledgeable than some of the people who may have spent time drafting them. But one example is you mentioned the thing about the advantages of these treaties, and one of them was free flow of travel between the countries of the respective people of the people and from respective countries. But then, for example, there is a thing about where you can be given primarily 6 months to stay, and then you say your own experience has been as soon as you spend 3 months or when you requested, they not give you the full 6 months, then and say you have to come back and ask for an extension of 3 more months, which in your own analysis is in violation of the treaties and the requirement as written. So listening to you, it would seem to me it either may be a lack of enforcement power that you cannot do anything, or maybe poor draftsmanship in the sense that they may have mentioned the 6 month entitlement, but they didn't quite clearly state that initial period given could be 6 months. I don't know how it is written. So you may be able to clarify that for me, whether they just say you could have as much as 6 months. Because if it is not specifically stated, they could even give you a 1 month initially, as long as you end up getting 6 months where you ask for an extension. So I don't know whether it is a violation of the policy by like Liberia, where you say you gotta experience day, or whether it's just a matter of the loose manner in which the wording of the agreement or the statute was put together. Then just for add to that, because like I say, any agreement, the vital part of an agreement is how is it enforced. Now you we say the aggrieved party can go to the Ecowas parliament and put forward a complaint or the grievance. And if the matter is not resolved to the satisfaction or to the mutual satisfaction of both sides, or to one of the parties, the dissatisfied party can go ahead and appeal. I use the word appeal. I don't know whether that's what you said. I can take the matter to the Ecowas court. Now, is the Ecowas court the final arbiter if you are dissatisfied with the outcome, or are there more than one stage by which if you lose at the court, in my own understanding, if there is a court of any jurisdiction, there should always be a room for, if you are dissatisfied, to have an appellate right. That's one. And two, my thing is how, because we have to think past, because at some point there's going to be one party who is stubborn, where might not take defeat for an answer, either because they feel say they have been aggrieved, or they just see an upper hand and want to take undue advantage of the situation. So my own question simply is, with respect to the Ecowas court, when they give them decision, I have not read that much into the matter, but I just want to know, one, is there any appellate process by which you can appeal the decision? Two, how is the decision enforced? How is it enforced? Because we talk about countries with territorial dispute. So if one country refuses to adhere to the outcome or the decision, how does enforcement become effective? You can elaborate on that for we, or?
Before I answer that question, let's start back from early points we raised in terms of free movement of citizens. Right? Then I'll go to Dandy. Because if you check the way our border is defined, and even when you're doing the joint border bilateral agreement, right? In most African countries, in those border posts, you get some host way, the front door then on one side, the back door then on the other side. So the front door then on one country, the back door then on the other country. Then you get a communal zone day, where the people then within that joint border post get free movement within that communal area. So for instance, somebody go in at the Saloon side, but if they do business at Guinea side, and vice versa, they go there at Guinea side, they do business in the Saloon side. This is where the issue of customs, tariff, and commonality comes in. So you get to make provision for those border communities. And it's not in Africa. In other areas in East Africa, you get a lot of these problems, especially cattle rustling, where there's a fight for access to grazing land. It don't cause a lot of border problems within, especially around the East Africa area. So you have to take into consideration why you have the joint border agreement. Primarily, you take into consideration the economic needs of the people that are around that commonality area, which I would put to similar to what happens in the Yenga area. Because there's mutual business between the Yenga people. So if one country can take over territorial integrity, it means they impose their rights on citizens within that area. They will guarantee their free movement. Now, you talk about the way the treaty is drafted and how you go to the Ecowas court. Normally, if you say 6 months, the other thing where you get for look at, apart from the regional treaty, the regional organizations respect the territorial integrity of a member state. It could be that that 6 months is what is in the protocol, but the member states get an allowance for, say, if, for instance, issues relating to terrorism or criminality, they could vary that right of the period of stay where you go get for another country. So when we draft their acts, then there should be a proviso, right, stating circumstances under which the host nation could vary the allowance in terms of length of stay of a citizen from a neighboring country. So again, there's a lacuna in the law. Now, when it comes to going to ECOWAS, now, we have an ECOWAS parliament. So any member state, the representative, and in our case in Sierra Leone, we don't have difficulty because one, the present speaker of Ecowas is a Sierra Leonean. Then all the main parties, like P4C, APC, SLPP, they get MPs them when are members of the Ecowas parliament, who we would expect, say, they go represent me there for discuss issues about regionalism and its effect on our country. But when it comes to taking a country to the ECOWAS court, if it's not resolved, it's a gray area. But one area where you can argue your case, now in terms of, because we get this economic integration and trade facilitation, in terms of restriction of trade. If you take a restriction of trade and the country, the complainant, able assess an economic loss or disbenefit, the court could find in favor and then can find the country who is the oppressor an amount to compensate the other country for loss of trade or income. But then also, on the wider sense, they could also sanction the culprit. So it depends on how the lawyers of the complaining country present their case to ECOWAS courts. And for me, the primary one, when the test case will go easy, now in terms of economic disadvantage first. And then it could be extended to restriction of citizens as prescribed under the Free Movement of Citizen Protocol. So those are the two areas. And these are what is open to the court to decide and grant punitive measures to the offending states.
Okay, you also mentioned
my knowledge of, because I was involved in helping to draft the Joint Border Operations Manual for the 15 ECOWAS states, or perhaps there are lawyers who might be more knowledgeable in international treaties and law, who can either dispute what I said or extend it or expand on it for confirm some of my thought process.
Well, I mean, that would be very much welcome, because with this program, we like people who think we are wrong on certain issues. Like we say, we don't claim to be the most knowledgeable on some of the issues there, what would they discuss? But so if someone has a much clearer and current conflicting issue or answer to what you would suggest, it would be great if they will call and just participate and help shed some light to some of the discussions there, because there are certain things we will not understand how a government in the run, like again, the Yenga issue, why has it taken so long? Why is it keep working so much against the interests of Sierra Leoneans? Where is Yenga in fact located? And people have never heard of the place. So these are information they will for, and why three successive governments or two successive governments, and as far as we know, it could be three: Kaba, Kuruma, and Bio. But some of us think it became more visible or more renowned under President Kaba. So we wonder why this issue has been lingering for so long. Let me just digress a little bit before I ask the question. In the earlier conversation, we forget to bring to the attention of our listeners that the lines are open, they're free to call at any time, and that I did not go over the standard protocol of announcing to the public the various numbers to call. So if I may take this opportunity now to just bring up these numbers to those who may be interested in calling but probably had no idea that the lines were open. The lines are indeed open. If you have anything to add to the discussion, if you have any questions to ask in these respects, please call these various numbers that I'm call at one of these numbers or one of these numbers that I'm about to mention. We get a toll-free number, which is 866-944-7722. Toll-free number, 866-944-7722. We also get a UK number, which is +44 2080891455. I repeat, +44 2080891455. We also have a number if you're calling from Australia, which is +61 290984 If you're calling from Australia, it's +61 290984 And last but not least, if you're calling on WhatsApp, then we'll get a 1-343-997-5828. 1-343-997-5828. In addition to these numbers just mentioned, we also can be seen or reached on Facebook, Instagram, and other related media. So please feel free to give us a call, as I mentioned. Now, going back, Mr. Mangum, in terms of the question I was asking or getting to, I wanted to bring up, you mentioned this cross-border freedom of going in and out of the respective member states, but also in event of extradition or one having committed a crime in a particular country. Okay, someone is sending a comment that may be helpful. This is something which the current and past governments have been paying less attention to. We need a concrete and permanent solution to this crisis. Is it possible to discuss a permanent solution with the junta regime in Guinea? And so, Mr. Mangum, you see the question. I will not precede you. I have an opinion, but I will just have that thought in mind to respond to this commentator. So, but just so I don't lose my thought in terms of this extradition question I wanted to ask, because I think the agreement also gives us the opportunity to extradite someone accused of a crime in one state and who fled to another state. Now, again, maybe I need to revisit the drafting or the status of the law, because I think countries should not only be given the power to just extradite. There has to be due process guidelines. So if one commits a crime in Sierra Leone and flees to Guinea or Liberia, it should not mean as a matter of right he has to be arrested and brought back to Sierra Leone. That person should be accorded due process protections wherever he's caught, which means we should guarantee him the right to a lawyer if he cannot afford one. So I'm just curious, because as a lawyer, as an American trained lawyer, I'm very sensitive to the issue of lack of due process. I think at every stage, the moment a person's right or freedom is taken from him, that person should immediately be accorded counsel for protecting right and for be allowed to defend himself if he has any, not for just left up to the government for just bring. So I know there are extradition treaties, but I don't know, since lately, because the time some of these extradition treaties were signed, Sierra Leone, for example, was not into all this constitutional stuff. They were just basically doing common law thing and international treaties. But now, in addition to the international treaties, which is the plural of treaties, In addition to them, treaties there will sign. Also, there are fundamental constitutional rights from the countries these people came from. And those countries also should have structural due process and guidelines in place. I do not know, and you not being a lawyer, you may not know, but if you have any information with respect to that, can you please give us a call? Now, I'm piling up on you, so have that in mind. So someone had sent in a commentary in the form of a question. Now we have a caller on the line. So let's take the caller. So I hope you make a note of all of this. So hello, caller. What's your name and where you call from?
Good evening again, Mr. Shilon. Mr. Mangot from this is from Leicester for Mustafa.
Mr. Mustafa, thank you. Always
yes.
Nice to hear from you.
You're welcome. So this issue about Yenga, like when I get somebody know your power, somebody don't test you. Now, so this thing they like Guinea know the powers of Sierra Leone, no say we admire them. I mean, me say don't get this personal experience where I be young. One man at the area, he come on a village, he come, and the man, now I threaten him. I take him money. We want make now I threat him. So then carry move on from me. Anytime I just take him money, the man to map the collie, I just take him money. Anytime I see something, I say give me that. Now my one no say he will beat me. But I give the example. I come to Guinea because Guinea don't win Sierra Leone. All the time that we dey negotiate, that they don't can talk several times. They don't come all day. They come back at will. We just not get mind go day with Guinea and then they go. We don't even get mind go day for go erect any structure or for go show any ownership or whatever form we go show say this is not part of Sierra Leone administration there. As Guinea and then go show the left hand. So because the government said they free for good day. So this is the thing this weekend don't weigh. We then go pin that because we then say since even like about English because for French they say depuis in French. They write them since that means they want show we say now then get this place since then get an agenda from that they not come for can help the war at that time. They purposely came to grab I don't know what is like when I say within the Netherlands why they so particularly cross over the water for Can to Yenga. Nobody knows why. But it comes back to the point that when even the Mamadi Bikana Saloon, now the only country this where it allows somebody to carry out weapons, they carry out to demand them and they enter state house. So he even can't take over government if he want. So they not see we all kind of way that we cannot do anything. We are people only calling no more. We should demand that I just civilian them. We should demand simply not for civilian then they. They're not there for military confrontation or anything you for do with military. So now this Guinea don't see. Now it make them wonderland and they know so they will get her because there's not going to be any resistance. So now me won't take on that for that Yenga issue. Guinea they at their mercy. If they want, they take them over. If they want anything they want to do, they can withdraw or give it back to us. But we not get mine for even enter that land at any given time. Because we're afraid will be the repercussions. We Guinean soldiers and they come. We get the ammunition only for fight small citizens. We don't get arms, but we come to the man, we don't go there. Now me take that about Yenga. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Mustafa. Thanks a lot. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead.
In Creole context, say me and you will get that connection with Fulaton, Fobe, and Abadin.
Correct.
We can put Bible say, how they see you na our job, now so they will call you for good turn fufutik. You understand? Which correct. Simply means yes. The people in the way you for see what you want. A lot of comments on waiting he say about Mamadi Doumbouya coming into Sierra Leone like the Trojan War. Even within the Ecowas protocol, you get issues relating to arms. We are not at war, right? We, as a country, therefore safeguard with territorial integrity. Before Mamadi Doumbouya entered Sierra Leone, we could have contacted, they should have contacted our internal security ministry or the minister and then forgive them the conditions under which he could come and visit. So just coming in with full arms and armor should not be allowed. Now, Fitiai, that's not your point. No matter what people and say, that's not your point, Fitiai. And again, he come back, say, he tests the waters. All of a sudden, Sierra Leoneans see the man, he come with weapons, armored carriers, menacing-looking soldiers, drove all the way to the border. Somebody when they come say they can't talk to him brother. You know they can't you all cutlass. If me and you now brother, you say they can't be us, follow talk. I'm not gonna see you come with cutlass and everything. Now that makes you get parable na Creole say, keep tick behind you don't know when you neighbor the craze. You know? Because you have to protect your interests. So then I want. Then the question where that person asks, where he say, if we were able to negotiate with a junta regime, Lord realize say, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Mali.
Mr. Megam, can I interrupt you? Can you hold your thought, please? Hold your thought. So let's just get a caller off the line. Just hold your thought, please. Don't lose it. Hello, caller. What's your name? Who's you call from?
Yeah, Mina Abdul. I from America.
Okay, Abdul. Thank you very much for calling. You know, one of our ardent listeners. So, yeah, please say what you have on your mind.
I thank you for this sensitive and very important issue we will discuss. I learned a lot from the exposition of Mr. Mengo. But I want just to make my own submission, then I will perhaps ask a question at the end. I think this whole brouhaha starts before the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885, during the scramble and partition of Africa. And the events, subsequent events, way before and after the Berlin Conference. We know say the essence of the Berlin Conference, now one for recognition of the territories where the big powers, the European powers, them they already get, and secondly the further annexation of them territories. And then we realize that Samori Touré in reign during the second half of the 19th century. When I find out say the pillar where them go put this mark 1896.
1886.
The Berlin Conference take place 1884, 1885. Then already they recognize territories. But we realize that Samori Touré they involved in expansionist tendencies. They expand in the Guinea territory from the east, from the south, and they expand the territory. So I believe that from there, and they Samori Touré don't extend the territory up to that point. Because some time ago, 3 decades ago, when this issue starts, we get a map from the French archive and one from the British archive. They were able to locate, to ascertain that this land belongs to Sierra Leone. But before I ask the question, I just want to take on a long memory lane. We remember the Bakassi Peninsula between Guinea, Cameroon and Nigeria. The OAU then, they mediate on that crisis. But the two leaders then were so intransigent. Babangida then and the Paul Biya now. Babangida was refusing to give in. So what OAU then aiming for results. It was the same thing between Chad and Libya, the Aouzou slip. Then Idris Abre was the president, then Gaddafi. That was the reason Abre was accusing Gaddafi of supporting the rebel of Bukuni were there. The also split is a split between the two countries, between Libya and Chad. So, conflict, territorial conflict, it is something that is not unique because it is everywhere in Africa. Whereas in these territories, one state they claim and say they get them, then the other state they claim say they get them. Al-Flau and Ghana, the same thing. Because you know, say the tribes and cut across, just as letting Mr. Mengo say, the tribes and cut across the two states. So there is always that difficulty in demarcating the territories, which one belongs to which one. But the question I go ask, from last and context, when this conflict, this issue arise, Yenga try to mediate diplomatically. We know they say to this Alpha Conde, then to this current man with the dinner. The question I go ask Mr. Mengo, you know, free to say the Guinean authorities all throughout the negotiation between Sierra Leone leaders from Tijankaba and Escoma and now Marabu, the Guinean authorities, heads of state, they are not negotiating in good faith because now that we Sierra Leoneans, that we the people say they are not negotiating in good faith. Cameroon and Nigeria, it was the same issue until they took it to the Court of United Nations Court of Arbitration. Even when the Court of Arbitration say now the land, the Bakassi Peninsula belongs to Cameroon, Nigeria refused to relinquish that territory. So, from my own perception, even if we take this case to the Court of Arbitration, I believe say the Guinean authorities, they are so intransigent, they're not going to relinquish their land. So I wonder, I just want to know, I want to get your opinion. If you don't need to say now just intransigent to make clear, they refuse to hand the territory to Sierra Leone. I've stopped so far. Thank you.
If I may precede Mr. Bengot on this, because, and the only reason is I want to throw in my own personal opinion so he can deal with all at the same time. Now, the examples that you give, where you say in the Nigerian situation, they have been very intransigent and are not clear on the outcome. Is the situation still unresolved, or has it been finalized, the decision? So I'm not clear on that. So Mr. Mengot might be able to shed some light on that. The other thing is the previous caller. One second. The previous caller also had called, and he take the position that we have been a contributor to the intransigence or the reluctance or the lack of cooperation on the part of Guinea because we have never shown the will to, in any way, shape, or form, demand compliance on the part of Guinea. And by we demonstrating weakness and not showing the requisite will that it takes to retain your territorial integrity, that we have become enablers, and that's why Guinea has gone this far. Because if Guinea actually, sincerely believe that they have any jurisdiction over that piece of property, and if it was in truth and in fact that that land there was theirs, we will not be talking about it because Guinea will have even demonstrated more activity of ownership than they are even demonstrating. The previous caller said Guinea is doing what Guinea is doing because we're letting them do it. And so by so doing, we're enabling them to keep taking undue advantage of we. So I'm throwing all of that, Mr. Mengo, so you can just analyze all for we.
Okay, I mean, in the case of the Nigeria-Cameroon, and in any negotiation, it depends on the head of states, them, that commonality of purpose. Because the Nigerian-Cameroon situation was resolved when Babangida left power and Obasanjo was then head of state, adhered to the decisions made by the UN Court of Arbitration. So in international treaties and negotiation, it comes with good faith. And also, the caller talk say we are weakened by various things. Let's look at the history and relationship with Guinea, right? We go back to as far back as 1968, when I attended some of we get sense. 67, 68, after the election, when Chaka Stephen was sworn in, was supposed to be sworn in as prime minister, and there was a coup d'etat, and martial law, and he went on exile. Where did he go on exile? He went to Guinea.
Guinea, correct.
And with the help of Sheku Toure, he was able to come back. Then you take even Tijan Kaba. When we get the AFRC boys took over, where did he go? He went back to Guinea, refuge. Yeah. And in fact, the British High Commissioner at that time was berated, Peter Penfold, because he then followed Kaba and his team to Guinea instead of coming back to the UK. Then the Guineans have also seen how, with our carelessness, when we had the war in Liberia, we did not secure our border. They secured us. Charles Taylor and his team, aided and abetted by Fode Sanko, were able to move easily into Sierra Leone. And the rest is history. We know about blood diamonds. So it's like when we were young boys, we've all been bullied in our time. People will always pick on the weakling. So the Guineans see us as a weak nation. Because whenever we have crisis, our leaders go to them for refuge. So they look at us as not strong enough to protect our territorial integrity. And also, we therefore take the colonial factor. And I'm talking this from the fact that, as I say, my other country is Cameroon, which is a typical example. We see what's in the happen in Cameroon now, between the Anglophone-speaking Cameroonians and the Francophone-speaking Cameroonians. They have two different cultures. Even if you take the law, right? In the French law, it says guilty until proved innocent. And in the English law, it's innocent until proved guilty. Then even in the language, the way they talk, right? The Englishman will make snide remarks and say, do as the French. Yeah? The Frenchman said, go make snide remarks, do as the English. We know even our colonial masters, England and France, they fought the 100 Years' War. So there's this cultural alienation between the two, even though we have tribes that are shared commonality. And then comes to the question of whether you can negotiate with Mamadi Doumbouya now. As we know, the three countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea, because it's a military regime, Ecowas has placed some sanction on them, and they are trying to, together with the AU, for trying to get them to return to civilian rule. And in the Ecowas region, one of the key players there in trying to facilitate that is our own very president. So in a way, I cannot be quoted or substantiated on that, but that shows the bravado that Mamadou Doumbouya came in with his troops. Say, you know, they can't talk to you, paddy, or you brother, you come with arms. Nobody can convince me. If at the time he wanted to come, We have had a lot of cases in Africa where leaders meet in the border. But for coming with that show of force and bravado, it resonates some of the callers and commentaries from our people that the Guineans see us as a weak side. And they will continue to do that. The only time Yenga will change, if we have a civilian government in Guinea and a president who is willing to discuss issues of territorial integrity and also going back to what I started, joint border management and operations of then common areas indeed. So that would be my comment on this whole thing.
Okay, if I may add to that, based upon what I hear you say, I take the position that, and since we get a common theme about not only the weakness of Sierra Leone, but the flagrant display of weakness and total lack of willpower to withstand or to confront, not even withstand, to confront the Guineans. But if I may add to that, you see, you mentioned the Nigerian, which country? Cameroon? Is it Cameroon?
Cameroon.
Okay, the Nigerian-Cameroon conflict, when resolution was not reached, when Obasanjo came, it must be, I'm just guessing, just from a simple point of logic, it must not have been Obasanjo who brought the issue up. I would think it's the Cameroonian who were persistent who brought it up again, because they saw an opportunity to talk to reason with someone who may reason with them. But here is our situation. We've mentioned, we've had civilian governments in Guinea. There is no evidence that we have even mustered the courage or the vision to bring it up when the opportunity presented itself, that we may have a more conducive atmosphere and listening opponent to discuss the issue with. I may be wrong, you can correct me on that, because you see, Cameroon took advantage of the situation. They saw a leader, despite the size of Nigeria, size-wise, population-wise, then say, here, because that's good, what good leadership is. They saw the opportunity, they knew that was their land. The only reason why Nigeria was flexing their muscle was because they were bigger and powerful, but they saw the opportunity to talk to a more reasonable counterpart, and they went for it. And luckily, it worked. So the question is, before Doumbouya came, he's been preceded by civilian governments. And we will not get evidence. And this again, we may be wrong, but people need to call in and show us where we took the interest for protecting territorial integrity by bringing the issue up in any forum. So the problem is, Guineans or Guinea not to do waiting on characteristic of countries, because throughout human history, territorial disagreement has always been the hallmark of major disputes and disagreements. But the problem is, the fault lies squarely on us, who are looking the other way, pretending that there is nothing wrong and not making any effort for do something and resolve this problem. Because other than the Guineans going at the border and creating not even skirmishes, just flexing the muscle, terrorizing the residents in the area on the Sierra Leonean side, imposing, and I think this is the appropriate time for because we'll get one other video where I think this is the appropriate time for that video to be played, where the paramount chief and the Sierra Leonean side, they show how the Guinean soldiers, then they impede not only the free flow of the Sierra Leoneans in the area, but how then they impose certain financial duties on them for crossing on the other side. Even when the Guineans tend to think the water separate the two countries, the Guineans are making rules and laws affecting the Sierra Leoneans on the Sierra Leonean side. I think the paramount chief can say that. So the video can be played for us. But before we play the video, the other point I want to make, like Mr. Mangot said, I mean, there was a breach of international protocol. Like you say, I cannot think of a much better example than that. You don't go offend your brother or your friend, you take cutlass or gun, go to your house, and you say, I can't tell I do, I can't tell I do. No, you must get ulterior motive, because why do you think the necessity of arming yourself? So in Dumbuya Iyun case, in coming to Sierra Leone, or coming to the border, he was just trying to show, it was a show of power and force, for say, I am coming to talk to Una just for the record, but in case when I try for put up any resistance, I get what it takes to crush Una. Well, whether factually that's what it is, but we've always been a timid military. I mean, we have to accept the history. And for those of you listening, this is not going to do with BO, even though he's a soldier. That's the history before even BO was born. The only time we've shown gallantry, in my view, was during the Second World War, when the British had some of our soldiers to go to various countries, Burma and all them places, and they fight against Germany and all of that, you know. But even when we had this the Civil War, the AFRC situation, our soldiers were timid. And that's when you had the BO and the Stresser and all these guys at the border. And then Mr. Mengot mentioned one thing, that we have never guarded our border properly. That's how Ebola was able to come into the place, because we don't know, say, Guinea get the problem. We never put any infrastructure in place for make sure, say, we minimize the entry of that disease there, and then it cause devastation. So we get very poor history. So that said, I just want for if Mr. Mengot get anything to add to what you mean to say, because this is not just my own general observation, but to me, the Yenga problem, the fault lies on us, not the Guineans. The Guineans didn't see an opportunity. So we can play the video there. You can comment on everything, Mr. Mengot.
Okay.
Bane Kando Chiefdom, na one chiefdom we go find inside Kono districts. The chiefdom now one of the crossing points where they share boundary with Guinea along the Meli River. As a result of the presence of the Guinean, the paramount chief for Bane Kando Chiefdom, PC Bawa, always concern how the Guinean they treating people them along that line there. It talks say the canoe we did na the Guinean and they run them, and people they pay for cross over and come back to Salon side. And also the Guinean they don't put 6 to 7 dredge where they na the water and the Meli River where they do gold mining. It talks say Salon person no get one right inside the water day, as the Guinean people them they control them. The way you steam, because waka inside Bane Kando Chiefdom and go na the crossing point outside the activities they carry on. Joshua Sir Pitikoy, me get this for say.
The people in this community also, when I say Aluni and them, then they raise concern, say this water, where the Meli River, it belongs to both of the countries, the Sierra Leonean part and the Guinean part. But the Guinean they no more get access to this water, they can't put dredge, and the Sierra Leoneans they know they get access to this water also.
As a result of them concerning also, the paramount chief for Bane Kando Chiefdom, PC Bawa, they call on the security people them for men and turn the Yaitangawan along the crossing points. And me get this for say.
At the border, the Guineans and they harassing too much. Well, people who want cross and let me pay. Now they get the canoes and they get everything, they pay. The people they pay. Now they don't can put about 6 to 7 drakes in water. Okay. And they walk with it. They don't allow any Salonians to put drag.
People them wait up inside Bane Kando Chiefdom. Some of them get this for say.
People then come, then say then come with them drag them. We can't ask them, then we say now we don't send them drag them, then say then and the young government send now. The Guineans get more access to that water side than we. They even deprive the Sierra Leoneans.
For Wales, Dauda Kama, Joshua Sir Pitikoy, Alfred Joseph Kuma put this report together.
All right, Mr. Mengot, It's all yours. So we
Okay.
clearly see the demonstration there of the one-sidedness of the lack of any show of ownership, let alone protection of this common boundary.
Okay, what I have to say is it goes back to what you are called institutional lapses in our system. Even it comes to the security sector. Because let me take a military man, regardless of your rank. When you take your oath, that oath where you take is to protect the nation's territorial integrity against any enemies, foreign or domestic. Now I repeat that. Any enemies, foreign or domestic. But we own forces seem to be more concentrating on enemies, domestic, rather than enemies, foreign. And people can dispute my fact, but we can see it. So what we have to do, we have to look at our security forces, right? First thing I would suggest, as somebody who has experience in looking at border management, security and control, the first thing we get for review with border, because you get the main border and you get a lot of porous border, right? There's new technology, security surveillance. We get for also look at the security forces them and train people them where in border security and border control. You not just get for be the army. You can get a joint force. You get the army. For instance, we in the country where you take military, arts lab, we get Navy, but almost gunboats they'll get. It's not just creating these institutions, whether it's security institutions, but how much do you spend in training these people, in equipping them, and defending the rights of the citizens? We have also institutions who are called ONS, Office of National Security. These are people who should be doing what we call recce, reconnaissance. Their duty is to find out porous areas and threats and report them through the Ministry of Internal Security, and we get Joint Security Council, which I'm sure is chaired by the President. So we have not put institutions and systems in place to protect our territorial integrity, right? Now, just like if you didn't have Salo, what do you think the people in a bill host now, right? And in that case, we're going to talk now. You get people in a bill host, they get high wall, you get barbed wire on top of the wall. Even the host, they get window, they get metal grating and everything. Because you want to protect your home, yourself, your life and property. And that should also be extended to the state. We have to look at with borders. Now is the time when we get modern technology. Look at deployment of border security and border control, you know, and train those people. Because if at the time, like this second video we will get, we will not map out of with border control and everything. If, for instance, from time immemorial, there were Sierra Leonean securities in those places, which we call, because you get for map out areas of vulnerability and risk. I'm sure when the Guinean soldiers they come there, or the Guinean people they see on we own side, we are well protected. It will limit the activity. So we have to go back to our national security policy, the institutions charged with the responsibility to protect our territorial integrity, developing systems to enhance that protection, and committed to that. That's on the one side. The other side, again, what I get for look, is the economic advantage. Now we have a situation where Sierra Leoneans buy more from Guinea than Guineans buy from us. One, because Conakry is a free port. Then since even apart from that, we depend on them. for access to goods where we can get elsewhere or we can produce our country. So all they need to do, if we want to make noise, close the border. Then it affects the entire trade. So we have to look at trade facilitation, access to markets and goods. So it's a holistic view. We have to look at the economy, trade between the two nations. We have to look at territorial integrity, and we must invest in protecting our nation's security. That will be my summation to this whole thing.
Okay, and if I may add just briefly to that, in addition, to what you just said, Mr. along the same stretch. So when we look, and when we talk about internal security now, you just mentioned the fact that the leadership, regardless whether it's a military or civilian leadership, but we do have a civilian leadership, you took an oath to the Constitution that the country will be protected against all sorts of enemies, foreign and domestic. So when appointments are made for certain ministerial or ministries, we should take into account, maybe we'll forget a clearly defined work description for ministers and with deputy ministers. Because if we get internal affairs minister, it seems to me all this talk we don't talk so. Now part of a ministry for protect the people in Yenga and for protect the territorial right of Yenga and so on and so forth. So if we can direct the power of the office to the appropriate problem, we will come up with a satisfying solution. Instead of misdirecting these powers, and this is guilty of governments, now that will make, we need a government who will begin for stop weaponizing the army, the police, because if, as Mr. Mengot said just now, even the territorial situation, not call for the army as yet. We can train border patrol officers. We can install alarm and watch systems them for keep abreast of transgression or trespassing. But in this transgression, we can keep surveillance of that, for make sure say we protect the area. Plus, if we listen to the people, there is some dredging going on for minerals in the area. So think, and this is an area, because water is a very important thing. So we are trying to, we get for think about the environmental impact. If the Guineans are not worried about, we should think about the effect it gets on we. And since we get a river, we separate we. It's a question. It's a matter of fact that both countries, regardless of the boundary, who get more or less, we are both entitled to the water. So now, if we allow one side for being dredge and destroy the mineral value of the place, there's a question that if we have time for one more question, the answer is yes. So the moment that we begin for allow one side for introduce mining, regardless of which side, there is an environmental impact. We will be adverse to the well-being of the people, the agricultural well-being, as well as the commercial well-being of the people and in general of the country. So these are some observations and comments based upon the able explanation of Mr. Mengot on this issue. So we may take one more call, and then that will be the end of the show. We will get a closing statement from me. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where side you call from? Hello, caller. What's your name? Where side you call from? Okay. Unfortunately, we had the caller. I don't know, you get some misconnection. If you get back to we before we wrap up, yeah. But if not, we lost the caller. So, Mr. Mengat, I've made my own comment, and I say I put the problem squarely that we on side with lack of preparedness, with lack of willingness to defend what is ours. We prioritize the significance of what is happening, the environmental aspect, destruction of the environment, and so on. And if there are minerals there, we again encourage the Guineans to lay a stronghold of ownership of the mineral resources that may be found in that area there. So that said, the caller is back. So hello caller, what's your name and where you call from?
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm call this so I don't know if I can answer the question.
Yeah, go ahead. What was the question? Okay, what was the question again?
When I don't think say the Guinean authorities from Lansana Conte onto Mamadou Doumbouya, because I believe say all the Sierra Leonean heads of state, they all not engage them negotiating on this Yenga issue on a good faith. You know, not people say the Guinean authorities, they know they negotiate on the bad, they don't negotiate on the bad faith. Because, yeah, you know, not people say that they negotiate on the bad faith, because at that, the people of Sierra Leone, they feel say the Guinean authorities, they're not serious. Because when you look, when if I take on a down memory lane, the Nigerian and the and Cameroon on the Bakassi Peninsula, when Mr. Chilot alluded to, they start from OAU then, under Babangida. Then they go right through up to Obasanjo. Then even when they go resolve them, now the Court of United Nations Court of Arbitration, Nigeria still refuse to relinquish the territory. They still refuse to relinquish the territory, the Bakassi Peninsula, because of waiting them feel that they get from there. You know, not people saying the same thing, the Guineans, then they do na Yenga. Even though the authorities at Sierra Leone don't engage them severally or negotiate or let them come to a speedy conclusion. Because from my own perception, if even they ratify then treaties and then resolutions and the way the two countries and they get, as Mr. Chilon mentioned, Mr. Mengos mentioned, the Guineans are so intransigent that they are not going to give in to relinquish the territory. You see, because if we look at the Berlin Conference 1884-1885, they don't stipulate the annexation of territories by European powers and the recognition of them territories there by the European powers there. Samori Touré, during the end of the 19th century, made involved in territorial expansion of Guinea. And if you now see the pillar where they put together, 1896.
No, 1886. 86.
1886. Okay, well, you don't pass the Berlin Conference. If 1886, you don't pass the Berlin Conference. Berlin Conference in 1885. So how you annex that territory in 1886? So it was an expansionist policy in the Samori Touré. So because the scramble and partition of Africa, we don't resolve them. But 1884, I know there are territorial skirmishes between countries, like the Aouzou Street, where they between Chad and Libya. I'm not saying that was a territorial dispute, but the Yenga belongs to Sierra Leone, because I believe during the 70 issues that during Jean Kabain's time, the Guineans then get the map from France. Sierra Leone also got their own map, their own colonial map from Britain. And they placed the territory belongs to Sierra Leone. So, I believe the Guineans are intransigent, they're not one relinquish that territory. And even if they take the matter on the Court of Arbitration, the United Nations Court of Arbitration, then give Sierra Leone the right, then as Sierra Leone territory. Guineans are not going to relinquish that territory. I go back to now. I stop so far.
Okay, but the only disagreement I have with that, and your point is well taken, Mr. Abdul, except for the fact that we cannot be so pessimistic as to just conclude or presuppose that even if we go to the appropriate bodies, it's just like where somebody give you the example of a bully. A bully come, he take my money in my pocket. I know say I can report unto authorities them, but I'm convinced that even if the intelligence let give me my money back and it will give me, therefore I walk away. Well, it may have been wrong done on the part of the bully, but I've missed an opportunity if I knew there's an authority that will make him give me money back. We have to try everything possible. Nor do we have any concrete evidence that we have marshaled the necessary steps and force. And I talk about military force that it takes. It can be legal force. It can be a diplomatic force. We don't have any evidence that we have marshaled any such force with the intensity that is required for us to go to the requisite bodies and put forward with complaint and determine for arguable points successively Guinean government after Guinean government, and let that matter doesn't rest until the day comes. Even if it, because that's how you fight. If you know that you're right, you will be determined to fight through your lifetime and let the fight continue to the coming generation. But when we roll over and play dead, first of all, it's a dangerous practice, because all you do is to encourage the bully to continue. So based upon the history, the factual statement we just make about this former Guinean leader, who was way back at the 1800s was engaged in expansionist policy. He may just have done that for see how resistant we are. And we show a lack of willingness to fight in any capacity, diplomatically, militarily, and economically. We have not really demonstrated. Now, kudos to President Kaba, he raised the issue. But how forceful was his government? And we have two successive governments that have shown absolutely no interest. So I'm not convinced that the evidence is there to show that, number one, the Guineans are that intransigent in terms of giving us or withdrawing from that area. I'm not convinced that there is ample evidence to demonstrate that. Nor am I convinced that if international pressure is brought upon them, they would think of themselves as so powerful as to resist or ignore international pressure. And last but not least, like Mr. Mengon gave a very good example about the economic imbalance or the trade imbalance between we and Guinea. We buy more from them than they buy from us. But it puts us at an advantage, because if we close with border, it will adversely affect their market. Because we're trading with them, then they benefit more, so now then go suffer. So we are not even, there are so many steps we can take. I don't see the demonstration on the willingness on we part. So I still put the fault squarely on we part. You know, if me can I use, like I way past you 4 times, I begin kick your television and something down, and you fridge and knock and down. If you're not able to take ticks here for whack me, you for find some way for plan, for prevent me, for continue, for destroy you host. But if you let me, and mean a bully, maybe because I get a psychological problem, I'll continue doing it. So that's what Sierra Leone is doing. And we're focusing and redirecting with strength, the strength of the army, the strength of the politics, the strength of the government, in the wrong direction, while a country openly to take undue advantage of we, and because we get internal security department of somebody, we get activist ministers then, but we don't see how internally territorial integrity is being protected. Not when you start hearing threats from a minister who talks about crushing people at election time. Well, if he's so desirous of crushing something, we'll get Yenga. He can go show him power there. So that's all I have to say.
My final word, I mean, I'm always somebody who talks about institutions and joint up government. You talk about the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The Minister of Internal Affairs is a very important ministry. But in this case, successive government, the Ministry of Defense has been headed by the president. And Nkrumah was Minister of Defense. And we get president, there will be lofty titles. Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Fountain of Honor. You see, well, President Bio was a military man. So he could wear his military regalia for military occasions. But if you take President Nkrumah, was not a military man. How many times have we seen him wearing military uniform for occasions? That is a honor bestowed on him as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The French has a saying, noblesse oblige. To whom much is given, much is expected. So in this case, the Ministry of Defense, headed by the president, who is the head of the defense, in collaboration with the Ministry of Internal Security, right, and the Office of National Security, should sit down together, develop systems, plans of action on how to protect our borders and territorial integrity. Let's see them coming up with that strategy and policy, putting it to parliamentarians, debating it, and giving it the importance that is due, and also spending the right amount of money to provide the personnel with support and logistics. I'll end up, if you remember our friend Mr. Trump, he talked about building the wall between Mexico and US. So we need to have a strategy to build our own wall. It might not be a physical wall, but a virtual wall through intelligence, personnel, training, logistics, and use of modern technology. So I thank you all, and we'll meet again next Sunday. I'm in the Horn of Africa, where security is a key issue, and hope to join you next week. From Ifambulem, I say tata.
Same here.